The 2024 presidential election results are in, and with Arizona's call for Donald Trump last night, the final electoral map is set. In this video, we're taking a detailed look at the numbers across each state, with a spotlight on the most notable shifts and outcomes. Donald Trump's performance defied expectations across the board, delivering some impressive results in key battlegrounds and beyond. Let's dive into the data and see how the map unfolded in this historic election. Let's start with the West Coast. States like Washington, Oregon, and California are still solid for Kamala Harris. But take a look at the margins. Over 12% is solid, between 5% and 12% is likely, 1% to 5% is lean, and anything less than 1% tilt. In Washington, Harris takes it by 19 points, almost exactly the same as Biden's margin 4 years ago. In Oregon, it's a 15-point win for Harris, right in line with Biden's 2020 victory. But in California, this is where it gets interesting. Harris wins her home state by just 19%, a dramatic drop from Biden's 29.2% 4 years ago. While California remains blue, with a margin of over 12%, this is a clear sign that the state's support for Democrats is weakening. Now let's head to Nevada. This is a big one. Donald Trump has flipped Nevada, making him the first Republican to win the state since George W. Bush in 2004. In 2008, Obama won Nevada by an impressive 12.5%, and Biden took it by 2.4% in 2020. But this year, Trump is on track to win Nevada by 4 points. That's a significant shift. Trump's also ahead in the popular vote, sitting at 50.5%. That's a 2.5-point lead over Harris, even bigger than Hillary Clinton's margin in 2016. Despite the strong Democratic hold in Clark County, Las Vegas, Trump did even better than expected. Nevada now leans Republican, a state that hasn't gone red in nearly 2 decades. Next up is Arizona, the last state to be called. Trump's performance here is truly impressive. He's on track to win the state by nearly 7 points, a huge shift from the 2020 election when Biden narrowly won Arizona. Trump's doing especially well in Maricopa County, Phoenix area, which has historically been a Democrat stronghold. Despite Kari Lake's Senate defeat, Trump is outperforming his 2016 margin in Arizona, securing it for the GOP once again. Arizona moves into the likely Republican column. In Colorado, Kamala Harris wins by 11 points, down from Biden's nearly 14-point margin in 2020. While not a dramatic shift, it's a sign that the state's Democratic dominance may be waning. In New Mexico, Harris wins by just over 5 points, a significant decline in support for Democrats. The state's Hispanic voters continue to shift toward Trump and the Republicans. Both Colorado and New Mexico are still likely Democratic wins, but the margin has tightened considerably. In Texas, Donald Trump absolutely crushed expectations. While polls had him winning by around 8 to 10 points, Trump is on track to win by a massive 14 points. This marks the largest margin since Mitt Romney's 2012 victory. Trump's margin is up from a 5-point win in 2020, signaling that Texas is now firmly in the red column. This marks a significant shift away from the blue wave predictions and puts Texas in the solid Republican category for the foreseeable future. In the Great Plains, Trump is set to win every single state with ease. Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, except its 2nd district, Kansas, and Oklahoma are all solidly Trump. Nebraska's 2nd district, however, is still leaning toward the Democrats, but with a smaller margin than in 2020. In Alaska, Trump is on track to win by 16 points, while Harris takes Hawaii by 24 points. These states remain solid for their respective parties, with Alaska going red and Hawaii staying blue. Now let's move to the Midwest. This is where Kamala Harris needed to perform well to secure the election. But unfortunately for her, Democrats are facing their worst position in the Midwest since the 1980s. In Minnesota, Harris only wins by 4 points, far closer than any Democrat has come in decades. Despite Governor Tim Walz on the ticket, Harris's margin is the narrowest since 1972. In Iowa, Trump wins by a staggering 16 points, his largest margin yet in the state. Wisconsin is a true battleground, but Trump is on track to win by less than 1%. Harris is underperforming in a region once seen as reliable for Democrats. Illinois, typically a solid Democratic state, is now much more competitive. Harris is expected to win by just 9 points, down from 17 points in 2020, showing a major shift. In Illinois, a state that should have been an easy win for Harris. In a liberal stronghold like Chicago, her lead ended up only around 39%, not the 40% plus margin. Illinois is now just likely Harris instead of solid blue. Indiana, of course, stayed solidly red in Trump's column, even without Mike Pence on the ticket. Ohio saw Trump secure an 11-point lead, placing it firmly as a likely Republican state, a 3-point improvement from 2020. Pennsylvania flipped as well, with Trump taking a 3-point margin in a state Biden previously won. Erie County, Pennsylvania's bellwether, went red, further signaling the shift. Now let's move to the Northeast, a region traditionally dominated by Democrats. However, there has been a significant shift, making the Northeast competitive. States like Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, Maryland, and the District of Columbia remain solidly Democratic, winning by margins of 12 points or more. But New York is on track to win by just under 12 points, the worst margin for any Democrat since 1988. Kamala Harris's performance in New York has been record-breaking in terms of how bad it has been for Democrats. Every Democrat since 1992 has won New York by a solid margin, but Harris is struggling here. In New York, Harris is struggling significantly, with her lead shrinking to just under 12 points. This is the smallest margin for a Democrat since 1988. Despite traditionally dominating in these states, Harris is now facing stiff competition, signaling trouble for Democrats in once secure blue states. New Jersey, once a Democratic stronghold, is now leaning much closer. Harris is expected to win by just 6 points, a huge drop from Biden's 16-point win in 2020. Trump is also within striking distance, having closed the gap significantly. In New Hampshire, Harris is struggling to maintain a comfortable lead, with her margin shrinking to just 3 points. Despite a Democratic Senate victory, Harris is underperforming, especially given the state's long-standing liberal reputation. In Maine, ranked choice voting complicates things. Harris is expected to win by 7 points statewide, but the 2nd District is likely to go for Trump by around 9 points, signaling a shift even in traditionally blue areas. This is a far cry from the near-certain wins of past elections in the state. In the Deep South, Trump easily carries Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and South Carolina by overwhelming margins. Virginia is still leaning toward Harris, but with a much closer race than expected. Harris is only on track to win by 5 points. This signals that Virginia is becoming increasingly competitive, and it may no longer be the Democratic stronghold it once was. In North Carolina, Trump outperformed expectations, winning by 3 points despite polling showing a closer race. Even with concerns over the governor's race, Trump maintained his lead, making North Carolina lean Republican on the map. In Georgia, another swing state, Trump wins by 2 points, marking his 7th flip in these battleground states. Georgia remains more conservative than liberal, although the state's recent shift left has been notable. Finally, in Florida, Trump delivered a major victory. He won Florida by 13 points, far exceeding expectations. This marks his third consecutive win in the state, but this time with a margin much larger than in previous cycles. Trump even flipped Miami-Dade County, a county Hillary Clinton won by nearly 30 points in 2016. Florida is now solid red, joining Texas and Iowa as firmly Republican states. So, what does the final map look like? Donald Trump has secured 312 electoral votes, while Kamala Harris has 226. The map shows how well Trump performed across the country, especially in swing states like Arizona and Nevada, which were key to his victory. Despite some polling inaccuracies, this election was more accurately predicted than in 2016 and 2020. That's it for this breakdown. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more content as we continue to track political trends.